Arc 6, The Corridor of Memories. Chapter 47, I Won't Forgive You. A dark place. In the back of his head, the back. Myself, I who, you, Natsuki Subaru, Meili Portroot. Natsuki Kenichi, Elsa Grandhiert, Natsuki Naoko, Petra Leti, Emilia, Shala, Beatrice, Frederica Baumann, Anastasia Hoshin, Garfield Tinsel, Julius Jacolius, Otto Suwon, Ram, the blue hair, who is, I am, you are, I am, myself is, the others are, I, you, me. Myself, I. Natsuki Subaru. Myself, I. Natsuki Subaru. Who, I. Meili Portroot. Who, I. Meili Portroot. These thoughts spin round and round and round in his mind, blurring the lines between what is reality and what isn't. They are fused together as one, blending as one, becoming entwined as one, feeling affection as one, hating as one, suffering as one, loving as one, desiring as one, killing as one, wishing as one, destroying as one, threatening as one, understanding as one, crying as one, laughing as one, not understanding as one. You can only be yourself. Others can only be themselves. There's no room for compromise, no compromise out of pity, no chance to engender a compromise, no being considerate to each other, there's nothing at all in the end. Emilia, Subaru. Subaru. Shaking his head back and forth, he exerts himself in trying to extract the thorn of the so-called other person from inside himself with utmost effort. Emilia and Beatrice both gently hoist him up by his shoulders, and prop the struggling boy up from his left and right. Whilst feeling traces of the two's worries on their cheeks, the boy, the individual that should be called Natsuki Subaru, is trying to determine the boundary between his own self and others. He is struggling, trying to regain himself. A swirl of thoughts clouds him, the correct answer disappears due to the whirl of emotions which were melting together inside him. His lungs were convulsing. If he were to feel his throat now, he would realize that his breathing had become painful. From within his neck, he was experiencing a severe difficulty in his breathing that had come to life just now. A fear that he would suffocate was slowly attacking him. The sensation of impending death once again revives within him, the feeling of wanting to vomit surfaces inside him and causes tears to stream out of his eyes. Subaru. Whilst confronted by this horrible feeling, Subaru slowly and carefully tries to exclude things which don't define him from within him, struggling to establish his own personal identity. First-person pronouns, second-person pronouns, memory, recollections, impressions, feelings, identify which belong to the other person and distinguish between them. Just like that, if he sifts through what is not his and removes the stuff that got blended together, he will go back to as he was. Otherwise, this state where they are fused and blended together will never peel off. It was himself, and the little girl who had been killed by his own hands that were mixed together into a hodgepodge of. Echidna, Natsuki-kun, what on earth did you see? Are you able to tell us? Subaru, A voice had called out from in front of Subaru, as he was immersed by his current identity crisis. He looks at her. Right in front of him, at the same level he was crouched at, a person with pale, turquoise eyes is squinting at him. Anastasia, no, now it's Echidna, right? In any case, it's that girl. Despite Subaru having such recognition, Echidna's eyes remain quite serious, and she continues to speak. Echidna, I sympathize that you are in a tough spot. But the current situation we are all in is quite grave. If you are able to, we need information as soon as possible. That way we don't make any mistakes when dealing with this. Emilia, wait, Echidna. Just now, Subaru experienced something terrible. Echidna, of course, I know that. I also appreciate that his recklessness was something he did for us, you know. That is why we ought to have a duty in responding quickly to his judgment. Subaru can only let out a hoarse breath as Echidna's assertions pierced through Emilia, who had tried to defend him. Whilst talking, Echidna's gaze for a moment turned towards the fallen book on the floor behind him. Taking a look at the thick black binding of the book, Echidna continued her speech with because. Echidna, the little girl who accompanied us, is missing. Furthermore, we found a book which seemed to match with the little girl's name in this library that records the memories of the dead. This situation is serious. We cannot afford to be treading water here. Emilia, that's. Yeah, but. Emilia can't find a rebuttal against Echidna's low, insisting tone of voice. In fact, Echidna's complaint was justified. In this messed up situation, the only one to possess such vital information is Subaru. Taking everyone's feelings into consideration, it can be said that everyone here has no time to spare to calm down. As she knows that, Echidna is prepared to be blamed, so with a steeled heart, she raised her questions at Subaru. At hearing her resolve, Subaru grits his teeth again and places his hand against his throat. With all his strength, fighting against the feeling that he can't breathe, he shut his eyes and. Echidna, let me try asking again, Natsuki-kun. What did you see inside the bow? Subaru, I saw. Meili's memories. Echidna. Subaru responds with perfect honesty to Echidna's questions without attempting to deceive her. Just as he said that, next to her, Amelia held her breath, and in front of him, Echidna closed her eyes. Next to them, Beatrice, Julius and Ram each respectively have expressions of worry and grief floating across their faces. The Book of the Dead had shown Subaru Meili's memories. There isn't a single person here who wouldn't be able to understand what that meant. Could there have been a mistake and the memories in Meili's book had been laid out there by some error? How easy would it have been to comfort oneself by clinging on to such futile hope? However, in this place, he isn't alone in not wanting to surrender himself to this deception and escaping towards the more comfortable option. Especially for the girls right next to Subaru whose cheeks had stiffened in distress trying to bear this. Beatrice, calm down, Subaru, in fact. Calm down and focus on regaining yourself, I suppose. Subaru, so, RRY. Beatrice, it's okay, in fact. Right now, you can rely on Betty, I suppose. This isn't just your fault, Subaru, in fact. Don't beat yourself up, I suppose. Subaru. Beatrice had stood up and hugged Subaru's head as he breathed unsteadily. The little girl was gently stroking his black hair with her hands. Whilst checking on Subaru's well-being, which was scattered into thousands of little pieces, he notes the irony in it. Beatrice had so benevolently said that it wasn't Subaru's fault. But this was no one's fault but Natsuki Subaru's who had committed this crime. Not knowing this fact, Beatrice was speaking gently to him and treating him kindly. It was so absurd that it was almost comical, yet harrowing. Julius, Miss Ram, what do you think? As Beatrice and Subaru had been giving this exchange, Julius, with a serious look etched on his face, had turned towards Ram and tried to get her input on the matter. Compared to the others, the complexion of those two had not paled in shock to the same extent. Following Meili's memories, it's known that these two had been the most wary about her. At least, Meili had felt that both Ram and Julius had never lacked in vigilance towards her, as she had once been an assassin. Conversely, she had certainly taken note of Amelia and Echidna's carelessness towards her. Julius, if you believe the words that Subaru just spoke, Miss Meili has already. Ram, there's no way Barossa would be skillful or cold-hearted enough to conjure up a lie in this situation. I'm certain that the book is Meili's. To make sure, we could have someone else check it. Holding her slender arms, Ram glares down at the book that was still lying on the floor. Following that speech, Julius frowned in thought and said, Julius, if I were to. Ram, would there even be any leeway for you, since you'd be reading one of these books for a second time? So to speak, what if doing it a second time you end up in the same state as Barossa? Of course, we could also presume that it has only resounded to this degree in Barossa due to him being immature and inexperienced. Julius. Ram, but unfortunately, when it comes to your mindset now, whether it can be said to be more stable than Barossa's, Ram hasn't evaluated it as being any better. Standing up stiffly, Julius held his breath as he heard Ram's words, who had narrowed her light pink eyes. However, he quickly shook his head and said, that's reasonable. Julius, it's bitter, but I have no basis to reject the words of Miss Ram. Yesterday, when I acted in this predicament so selfishly and arbitrarily without consulting anyone, I'm definitely not qualified to do this at all. Echidna, I am sorry, but I also agree. Echidna raised her hand up and barged her way into the conversation after hearing Julia's self-deprecating words. And, whilst fiddling with her white scarf which was wrapped around the base of her neck, she said, Echidna, however, the basis of my argument is not about the state of mind which Julius is in. Purely, I am only stating my opposition to this from looking at the state Natsuki-kun is in, and saying that it's too dangerous to try this. Ram, it's pretty much a fact that it's dangerous. It's quite obvious that this situation is pretty messed up. Julius, indeed. Since the last time, it seems that the influence from reading the book has come out more strongly. The only question is whether this is down to reading the book more than once or whether it's due to the specific book you read. Ram, maybe it's both the number of times you read it and who the book belongs to? As Ram and Julius rack their brains, Echidna nods at the two saying, ah. Echidna, simply put, could there be a mechanism where your burden increases the more books you read, or perhaps, could it be that it warps your mind due to seeing the memories of a person that was close to you? I think the possibilities are divided into two. Ram, a person close to you, huh? Echidna had raised her fingers up, and to her conjecture, Ram turned towards Subaru. Whilst seeing her glaring at him, Subaru desperately tried not to scream from where he was, his face pressed against the middle of Beatrice's delicate chest. Most likely, Echidna's guesses were correct. The reason why Subaru's heart had suffered so much damage was due to her latter guess. The cause of this burden was likely because he had looked at the memories of someone he was quite well acquainted with. People involved in closer relationships, those fresh records of life bring a greater impact. It's natural that people are more interested in closer companions than people they have more distant relationships with. Subaru also wished this as a fact. As a matter of fact, Subaru, and Meili's minds had almost merged together, and he was coming to grips with that he wanted to know her. As a result, Subaru had come to face the unfathomable emptiness in the depth of oneself. That young girl had been carrying this feeling of emptiness for all of her life. Emilia, anyways, we can't sit still without doing anything. Let's go and search for Meili. A strong feeling of silence echoed across the room. It had been Emilia who had looked up firmly with both of her hands placed upon her chest and said this. Emilia had gained everyone's attentions in the library. Subaru widened his eyes at her words. Subaru, search. Searching, what the heck? What is the meaning of this? Meili, damn, but I am already dead. Even though they never even cared about her before she died. Emilia, even if we find her, it's probably too late. If only we had been together with that girl, but probably we couldn't have. But at the very least, we need to find her body. Subaru. Emilia, so, no one at all knows where that little girl could have wandered off to? First of all, we shall find her. And after that, we will see what we can do. Let's go search for her. Emilia's words weren't concrete, they were far off from being reliable and wise. What was the point of this? The insistence of the me inside Subaru remained unchanging. Moreover, it should have argued that it was a useful way of using time, if it was being a realist. However, no one in this place opposed Emilia's suggestion. There wasn't a single person who'd flatly deny her and say that was erring. Therefore, what followed Emilia's proposal was a realistic discussion on how to go about searching for Meili. She announced that they would split into groups to search for her. Emilia, we have no choice but to change our plan for today. We need to split up and search for her. Ram, before we do that, Ram will go and check to see if Rem is safe. Before I went out to call for Emilia-sama, Barosu and everyone else, I was with her in the spirits room. I will go back now, once again. Julius, that's okay Miss Ram. Subaru, it seems like a cruel thing to ask, but I want to make sure. Did you also happen to see Miss Meili's last moments in her Book of the Dead? Subaru hesitated to answer Julius' carefully worded inquiry. The answer to that question on whether he had seen Meili's last moments is a yes. Subaru had experienced the very moment in which Meili's life had been snuffed out. Her neck had been strangled, her consciousness had slipped away as she was being choked, her thoughts had been filled with hatred and despair, and then it had stopped abruptly. It must have been in that very moment that her life had ceased. It was Natsuki Subaru who had experienced this, and had been complicit in hiding the girl's corpse. Natsuki Subaru is helping the man who killed me. The Natsuki Subaru who knows me, was helping none other than Natsuki Subaru, the most detestable in this world. Echidna, Natsuki-kun, I want you to answer. Did you see her last moments? Where is she now? Did you see what on earth caused her death? Subaru. Echidna had kept hounding Subaru with questions as he remained speechless. It felt like the emotions in her words indicated that she was feeling suspicious on her pretty countenance. Her words made him feel on edge. His heartbeat quickens, his back starts to sweat. He fears that Beatrice, by his side, could notice this. In fact, Subaru wonders if everyone knows that he had some involvement in Meili's death. Subaru wonders if they already know and are feigning ignorance in order to draw out a confession from him by cornering him with devious tricks. These crazy ideas cross his mind. But each time these ideas had come to his mind, the look in their eyes denied these thoughts as being plausible. Emilia, Beatrice, Echidna and Julius' eyes had turned towards Subaru. His hands stained with blood, his thoughts scuzzy, Subaru is only struggling to frantically protect himself. He possesses such an ugly, rotten heart, that's what it seems like. Then, better yet, listen to my desires. Subaru, I didn't see up until the point where she died. There's no doubt though that she's inside the tower though. Subaru bit down firmly the temptations brought by her. Dangerous feelings are sprouting up deep down inside of him. She was trying to convince Subaru to confess to his crime. That was the sweet curse left behind by Meili Portroot. These thoughts are certainly newly born within Subaru. They want Emilia and the others to find Meili's dead body. Find her, mourn her, repent for what had happened, make him feel sorrow. The thoughts inside of him want to relieve the emotions coiled within his heart. He was getting to the point where he too no longer knew who out of Natsuki Subaru, myself, and Natsuki Subaru desired what. Echidna. Do you have any strength left to read the book again? Beatrice, Echidna. Echidna had thrown out a suggestion at him which you could call completely ruthless, as he struggled to decide on what he wanted. For a second, Subaru tried to reply with if you say I have to do it, but before he could, Beatrice had snapped at her. While still hugging Subaru's head, Beatrice's round eyes sharpened. Beatrice, what name does Betty have to shout out, in fact? In any case, I won't let that happen, I suppose. Past this, I oppose it, for both emotional and other reasons, in fact. Echidna, given the risks of being joined together as one, I would never have seriously recommended it. I wanted to make sure he was prepared just in case, that's all. You know, it wasn't my intention to make him do it even if he insisted. Beatrice, let's pray that was what you were really thinking, I suppose. Beatrice speaks angrily over his shoulder to Echidna, who was hastily taking back her words. Immediately after this exchange, it was Emilia and Julius simultaneously who broke the awkward silence that the two had left behind. Emilia, stop this now. I also don't agree with making Subaru do more reckless things. I also don't want us to be forever discussing this here, we need to start moving quickly. Julius, I completely agree with Emilia-sama. In these circumstances, we can assume it's very likely that an accident befell Miss Meili. Something may have happened, like slipping off the balcony or off the stairs, or she could have gone outside the tower. Shala, that's not what happened. Out of nowhere, Shala, who hadn't participated in the conversation until then, had interjected to deny the concerns that Julius had blurted out. She had picked up Meili's Book of the Dead that had fell down underneath the woman's feet. Whilst picking it up by its spine, she was shaking it from left to right. Shala, because, if Chibaiko number 2 had gone outside the tower, I would definitely have turned into a killing machine. What I mean by that is that no one went outside. Emilia, you sure are quick to touch the book that we hesitate to touch for some reason. Shala, leaving it out on the floor makes me feel kinda anxious. Like, what if someone thinks that it's disrespectful towards the library? I don't actually want to be a presence kill 'em all, you know. Note, Shala says something in English here which makes absolutely no sense. Doesn't even seem to be a reference. Whilst saying this, Shala was throwing the Book of the Dead around her hands as if she was juggling it. Her attitude seemed to be one born out of fear of disrespecting the library. However, it felt more unscrupulous in effect than anything. Julius scowled at her attitude. Julius, Miss Shala, I would like for you to stop messing about with the book. You're... Shala, you guys think that my heart isn't filled with grief or something like that? I'm not sure I said such a thing. For sure Chibaiko number 2 clung to me quite often. I also didn't dislike number 2, but, ultimately, except for Master, I don't give a fig about anyone else. Looking quite indifferent, Shala smiled and disregarded Julius' words. He couldn't catch a glimpse of any evil intent in what she had said. It was undoubtedly what Shala really felt, at least, that's how Subaru perceived it. In brief, she's a person who also finds it hard to comprehend certain emotions within her heart, compared to ordinary people. Actually, no. Ever since he came to this place, Subaru has only had a limited amount of contact with them. It's no wonder he isn't able to comprehend their true feelings. He wonders what complex emotions could be hiding on the other side of the mask of her smiling face. Though, that was just something he'd came to realize all too well now, after assimilating my life. Emilia, let's split up, we'll look for Meili. Subaru, you stay here with Beatrice. In between Subaru's self-condemnation and the awkward atmosphere left behind by Shala, Emilia raised her voice and cuts in with a few words to urge them all into action. Subaru's heart panged with shame at hearing the girl's instructions. They want to find me. Emilia, Beatrice, I'm leaving Subaru to you, okay? I'm going to go look around where Reed is. Beatrice, very well, in fact. Emilia and everybody else, be careful, I suppose. Exchanging these words, and placing him under Beatrice's care, Emilia and Beatrice sort out everyone's roles, praying for some stroke of luck in this situation. Emilia took Ram, Echidna and Julius with her, and went back into the tower to search for Meili. As he sees them disappearing out of the library, Subaru can't find any words to see them off. Beatrice, well then, I guess you aren't thinking about going with them, in fact. After seeing off the search party, she had been left behind next to Subaru. Whilst glaring at Shala, Beatrice had bluntly said this. At receiving Beatrice's scathing glance, Shala replied in an exaggerated tone, "Boo-it. Shala, you gotta remember my role here is just as Stars Keeper, no? So, given that I've taken that title, my body and soul belong to Master, so if Master was to wish for it, I would follow his requests with all I have. Beatrice, if that's the case, then you must also go and search for Meili, I suppose. Don't just dawdle here. Shala, really, is that so? Shala had craned her neck and looked towards Subaru with a look on her face that looked almost coquettish. Looking over Beatrice's head, she questioned Subaru about it directly. There's something bewitching about her appearance rather than the usual nonchalant appearance on her face. For the first time her facial expression showed signs of something else other than the usual youthful demeanor she has. Subaru. Subaru's heart once again leapt at seeing the charm in her face. It was as if he had been surprise attacked. He reflexively raised his face up and looked back into Shala's black irises, in which he couldn't read anything from. Face to face with Subaru, Shala's lips relax, and showing no traces of malintention she holds the Book of the Dead in front of her ample breasts. Shala, if Master wished me to do so, I would even knock down the moon. That's why I want to hear it from Master, not from the half-witch, or from Chibaiko number 1, or from the pretty boy. Subaru, Shala, Master, what should I do? Do you want me to look for Chibaiko number 2? Or? Shala trailed off her words, choosing not to say anything past that point. However, while looking for Subaru's decision and while she held the Book of the Dead by her breasts, Shala refrained herself from saying any more. Subaru reflected but couldn't come up with anything to say to her unwavering attitude. Where was the right answer deep down in himself? Subaru. His conflicted emotions towards what Emilia and the others had suggested were proof of Natsuki Subaru's current contradictory existence. Meili Portroot, her life, which by no means could be said to have been long. By having read the contents within her Book of the Dead, it had snatched away at him as it liked, as if digesting parts of him, blasphemously chewed, swallowed, and digested with an invisible stomach. Natsuki Subaru had fully savored the life of me and twice the meaning of it. As a result, the mixed consciousnesses of Natsuki Subaru and Natsuki Subaru were divided into something which half resembled schizophrenia, having also now taken in the little girl. Subaru wants to conceal the manner in which Meili had died. Subaru wishes them to find Meili's dead body that he himself had hid. Subaru hates Natsuki Subaru who killed me. And thus, contradicting wishes were born inside of Subaru, spurring him in trying to make their desires come true. Subaru, Shala, go and search for Meili. Please go and help Emilia and everyone else. Before he could even notice it, Subaru was issuing out something like an order regarding what to do about Meili. Receiving his instructions, Shala raised her eyebrows and straightened her body into a salute. Shala, roger that. If that's what Master wishes, I will do whatever you desire. Winking at him, whilst giving him a loving salute, Shala held out the book towards Subaru. He received from her the book which felt like a black weight in that moment. Shala stuck out her tongue at Subaru whose face had scrunched up into a frown. She looked somewhat mischievous, just like she was getting her own back. She turned away from Subaru, and she jumped down the library stairs with one giant leap. He sees her swaying black hair gradually disappearing from his sights. Feeling as if he had been released from a great tension, Subaru let out a sigh of relief. Subaru, such strange things. The falsely accused Natsuki Subaru, who doesn't want to divulge his participation in the crime, or let them find her dead body. I, the victim, wish for them to find my body and clear the anger and regret for myself. Natsuki Subaru, the perpetrator, who murders people and piles up acts of wickedness one after the other. All of these thoughts exist alongside each other in one body. All of them loom over and try to press Natsuki Subaru into selecting one of their choices. If he truly only cared about his own skin, he would have shut his mouth regarding Meili's life and death. He would have worked his brain harder to falsify the contents that he had seen within the Book of the Dead. In fact, he couldn't really have done that. Subaru wouldn't really have the intelligence to do such an act. But more than that, he felt hostility towards Natsuki Subaru and emphasized towards my own regrets there was anger towards himself in letting such a wicked being do as it pleases. It's true that last time, and the time before that, and even before that, that someone had been behind Subaru dying. But even that seems like as if it's a plot set up by Natsuki Subaru lurking inside of Subaru. It seems likely that it's a trap set up to make Subaru act rashly and hate the others. After all, what he had thought before reading the Book of the Dead was right, wasn't it? Emilia, Meili and everyone else, not one of them was truly evil. The only one who is evil is Natsuki Subaru, isn't it? Beatrice, Subaru, it's not good for you to be languishing in thought, in fact. It'd be better if you let go of that book, I suppose. Subaru. Just noticing her, Beatrice was kneeling right beside him, looking at him with a look of concern in her eyes. Right in front of him, she was giving him a look of concern. It resurfaced in his mind that Emilia had looked at him in the exact same way. A sense of discomfort takes hold of Subaru's heart. The emotions that Beatrice was letting off, they weren't directed towards Natsuki Subaru himself, rather, they were directed at Natsuki Subaru. It seems like such a terribly dishonest thing to do, and having received this himself after having hidden the fact that he'd lost his memory, and on top of that, having kept his silence about the true nature of Natsuki Subaru. Shouldn't he tell them? Before he knew it, it had been the current Natsuki Subaru who had snatched Meili's life from her. If that's what was going to happen, then, before that danger is once again turned towards Emilia, Beatrice, and the others. Subaru, why are you so kind to me? Beatrice, wait, that's such a sudden question, in fact. What's the matter, I suppose. Subaru, no, never mind. As a final word on this matter, if he is to crack the meaning behind these relationships that he had borrowed, maybe he needs to hear what had happened before becoming like so their real opinion. He needs to know the real meaning of why Emilia, Beatrice, and everyone else have so much faith, and are always turning towards Natsuki Subaru. Subaru. The moment he had tried to put some deep thought into it, a feeling of hesitation arises inside of Subaru's heart. That which I had turned towards Elsa. Emilia and the others who in this world treat Natsuki Subaru as someone close to them, that which they turn towards Natsuki Subaru. A gemstone that only Natsuki Subaru could have, that only he could gaze upon. The traces, the lingering scent, the remnants, the warmth that should have been there, why was it that only Natsuki Subaru was exposed to it in such proximity? Subaru. Why such a man? Why such a cruel human being? Why a man with such a cruel smile? Why this man involved in the death of Elsa? Why this man who laughed as he murdered Meili? Why this man who tried to conceal my death? Why is such a man, this man so loved? Subaru. I want to know. I don't know. I want to know. I don't know. Only me, only Subaru, only I do not know the reason. I don't know. I don't understand. It's all so one-sided. Subaru. If I ask, will I understand? If I ask, will I be able to call it into question? Can you tell me? Did you think it was genuine? The smile I expressed, the smile I showed was a fake, there was emptiness in my heart. That's because everyone wears masks, even you, Natsuki Subaru. Even despite you not having wanted to show it to your mother and father outside the house. If there's a way to know the truth, then where is it? What do they all really think of me? What are their true feelings? Why do they all believe in Natsuki Subaru? I can give that to you a way to know about this. Subaru. A voice resonating in his mind cruelly seduces him. And he realizes that the solution to the problem that had dominated his thoughts for so long was close by. Hadn't there been up until now a way to know the answer to this resting in between his arms? Beatrice, Subaru? Staring at the silent Subaru, Beatrice narrowed her eyes with uneasiness. Without returning her gaze, Subaru simply looked down between his arms. Subaru. A black, heavy tome, it seemed like it was offering a gruesome welcome to his curiosity. Chapter 48, Murder Becomes a Habit. Subaru. Subaru was silent whilst he looked down at the black cover of the Book of the Dead which he held in between his arms. Beatrice nestles closer to him, and feeling her worried and strange gaze, Subaru doesn't dare to move. Until now, what had dominated Natsuki Subaru's mind were questions he'd ask himself without any particular answer, as if engaging in Zen dialogue. The truth is, what had occupied Subaru's mind were just shallow thoughts that could be discarded as just wasteful thinking. They were the laughable, vague questions of a child. Everyone, no matter who, always has an inner face which others would never see. This was an obvious truth which everyone learned as they come of age. The expression of hatred behind a smile, the sorrow and tears behind their anger. It is human beings that can pretend that these emotions don't exist, while hiding their true feelings. It is impossible to fully understand the true wishes, the true desires, the true intentions of those human beings. Brothers, sisters, parents, children, spouses, family members, you can never fully come to understand any of them. Friends, childhood friends, best friends, lovers, no matter how close your relationship becomes, by no means is it ever possible to uncover what is hidden deep inside them. What they love. What they desire. What they prefer. Who they let their guard down around. Who they feel comfortable with. These were completely different problems to those various connections of mind and body. Indeed, he knows that. But still, he doesn't want to abandon these thoughts just for the sake of it. He wants to know, he wants to understand it, he wants to hear it, he wants them to reveal everything. That is his arrogant, but desired wish. Even more so, when it involves both his own and the others' lives hanging by a thread. Even if there is absolutely no way to do it, nor would one come to be. No, there was supposed to be absolutely no way to do it. He laughed at the thought of it, sure there was supposed to be absolutely no way to do such a thing. But in this Teijida library, Subaru ended up finding out how. Meili Portouta. By reading her Book of the Dead, Subaru vicariously experienced Meili's life, understood what she thought and felt, and who she hated at the time of her demise. Of course, this extremely short experience did not define Meili entirely. The time she had spent alive was too long to even accept all her individual events into his brain. Even if it had been a short life that she had lived, he could by no means have absorbed into him all of her memories. Eagerly gnawing away at the key points, drinking them in with the intention of understanding Meili. Those were how Natsuki Subaru felt right now, such was painfully clear to see. However, but, even so. By comprehending that he didn't understand even a bit of the girl, Subaru now had a deeper understanding of Meili than ever before. There was a person whom I cherished. Her life was stolen away from me, and, now alone, my heart continued to wander. Being with Subaru and the others, who were the ones responsible for that, I struggled to understand what exactly my purpose was. I went to the library to find her Book of the Dead, and I felt ashamed and in despair when I was discovered. Meili, whom Subaru knew absolutely nothing about. He had discovered the girl's innermost feelings and desires without even expecting it, and thus he had realized. This Book of the Dead itself was the means to truly find out the true intentions of others, without any falsehoods between. Subaru. It was just that he wants to know, that's the only thing he desires. The real intentions of Amelia, Beatrice, and the others in the tower is what he wishes to know. He wants to know why they put so much trust in Natsuki Subaru. Why do they believe Natsuki Subaru who was responsible for killing me? And now, what do they think of Subaru who desperately pretends to be the despicable Natsuki Subaru? Intimacy is just camouflage, hatred is the reality, and feelings like anger, sadness, and joy are temporary. Hostility and malice, aren't those their true feelings? I don't know. I want to know. I want to trust them. I can't trust them. Are Amelia and the others allies, or are they enemies? Are they enemies who killed Subaru, or are they allies that want him to live? Can he love them, or can't he? Can he hate them, or can't he? Won't he obtain that answer by reading their Book of the Dead? Beatrice, Subaru, you really look terrible, in fact. If you are feeling uneasy here, it'd be better if we went somewhere else for you to rest, I suppose. Touching Subaru's shoulder, who was immersed in thought, Beatrice gives her suggestion. Subaru was rendered breathless for a minute, being trapped by the gaze of her characteristic blue butterfly pattern in her eyes. Looking at it, the girl's tiny palm rested on Subaru's shoulder. What would happen if he took her hand, grabbed her head and smashed it on the floor with all his strength? Subaru, how small? Beatrice, what are you suddenly starting to say in fact? This smallness is exactly the reason behind Betty's loveliness, I suppose. Subaru has also said that in fact. Subaru reflexively relaxes his cheeks, as Beatrice sullenly blurts this out. Certainly, if Subaru was in his normal state, it wouldn't be weird for him to have said that. Noticing the similarity between himself and Natsuki Subaru, he smiles bitterly. Small. Truly, Beatrice was just a small child. Her neck was thin and her bones fragile. The hand that rested on Subaru's shoulder was small enough to be fully covered by his palm. If he put even a bit of strength into his arms whilst hugging her, it seems like her fragile body would break. If these thoughts are turned to actions, he should be able to easily kill her. If he kills her, if her life blinks out of existence, will her book appear in the library? Just like you did with me, and Subaru. Suddenly, Subaru hears a voice from his subconscious, one which would be impossible to call his own. It is somewhat sweet, glossy enough to sound adult, but it was a strangely familiar voice. In that short period of time, the voice became familiar enough that he could call it his own. The voice inside him was that of the dead little girl who mocks Natsuki Subaru's intentions. Subaru. However, Subaru discards this event, concentrating on the matter in front of him. That is, whether the Book of the Dead could be realistically utilized. If so, then how would he go about making this come true? Beatrice, your face looks really pale, I suppose. Indeed, we should go somewhere else in fact. But before that. Subaru, Beatrice, I must return that where it originally was, I suppose. It's no good for Betty to be in the haze, in fact. Saying that, Beatrice takes the Book of the Dead from Subaru's stiff hands. She holds it cautiously to ensure the book doesn't open, and places it where there was an empty gap in the bookshelf, the place where it originally was. Beatrice, it's easy to understand and remember where I positioned it, I suppose. However, it's possible that the books in this library will just start moving on its own. Subaru, a safety measure, yeah, I suppose that's right. Beatrice, you ought to think that bringing it out is pretty dangerous in fact. This is safer than throwing them out onto the floor because Shala is worried about that, I suppose. Subaru, I feel like being in this library is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Subaru dryly spits these words out as he replies to Beatrice. In reality, even in the world which Subaru knows, it's said that opportunities like coming across a book which has been published a number of years ago only come once. Just like coming across a second-hand bookstore whilst traveling, if he misses out on this opportunity, he may never find the book ever again. This speculation may also apply to this library. Like usual, had he been overthinking this? No doubt that this thought is bothering him. Either way, whilst warily looking at Beatrice's back as she struggles to arrange the books, Subaru immerses himself deeper and deeper into his sea of thoughts. Awfully realistically, counting backwards the lives from the warmth he'd felt, he searched for a way to kill her. Although Beatrice isn't the only one he should think about. Every single one of the members who are inside the tower are in a position to becoming a target to Subaru's plan involving the books of the dead. Melee, so you want to try and kill them because you want to check if they can be trusted, or if they should be doubted. Oni Isen truly is warped. The voice of the little girl interrupted him, causing Subaru to inwardly click his tongue. The first thing he wants to say back to her is that he thinks that this is a necessary thought experiment. By no means is Subaru a psychopath that is dominated by homicidal impulses, he isn't controlled by such abnormal urges whereby he must take pleasure in deeds like that. But right now, when he was thinking this through, this had been the only choice that had come to his mind. It seemed rational. Meili, enough with the excuses. I wonder, can't you just tell me what you're going to do? It would be very easy to get rid of Beatrice. This is because Subaru can see her back, unprotected, defenseless, completely unguarded. It can be clearly stated that Beatrice's life is precariously balanced by a thread which depends entirely on Subaru's flawed reasoning. When that rationality surpasses reason, Subaru will very likely take the girl's life quite easily. When it comes to Beatrice, the only options he has are to do or to not do. It seemed possible to entirely disregard the countless other possibilities that branched off as an alternative from his standpoint. Meili, what about the half which one Isan? The likes of Emilia would be even easier, a piece of cake. Once, he had even seized her by the neck after he had woken up. In the past, she hadn't shown any signs of resistance. As long as Subaru put all of his strength into his arms, he could easily break that fragile neck of hers. Certainly he can say that she has strength similar to that of a pro wrestler, but it means nothing unless she is prepared to use it. If in an instant, he strangles her neck with all his strength. Meili, it's your speciality, Ram, despite her sharp tongue, is in essence also merely a weak girl. It reminded Subaru about the time she cried while pressing her head against him, entreating him for his memories. With her thin arms desperately embracing him, weak, she was just a girl after all. Echidna is also the same way. Come to think of it, they're all weak girls. He really made the wrong selection of people if the mission was to cross the desert. As much as he would have liked to have more suitable people with him, there really just weren't enough people to go around. Therefore, even though Subaru could take advantage of that chance, the last obstacle in his way is a different story. Subaru, Julius. The only man who was the same as Subaru, until even now this character which carries a sword in hand, is an obstacle that stood in his way. It'd be impossible for him to say that it would be a good idea to strike at him head-on. It's a suicidal act to strike at Emilia head-on, but that's a whole other story. In any case, if he was to implement the Book of the Dead plan, he will be the biggest wall in his way. In other words, Julius is the one he should beat first. Meili, with the amount of time it takes to search for the books, however much time you have, it's not going to be enough, right? According to the words of the girl, Subaru's purpose isn't simply kill and be done with it. Rather, killing is a necessity, a passing point that must be cleared as his desires lay in front, on the side of the books of the dead obtained in exchange for death. For that purpose, it is necessary to be certain. He had killed, he had failed, so he could not let it end like this. Beyond this, he has a goal. Beatrice, Subaru, that's enough books for the moment, in fact. Let's get far away from here, like the spirit's room or somewhere like that, I suppose. You should calm down there, in fact. Subaru, spirits, room. Beatrice, coming back, taking Subaru's hand helps him to stand up. Subaru is reminded of the room with the spirit, and his restart point came to mind. That place is the green room, and at that place. Subaru, Patrash. Beatrice, you're saying that Earth Dragon's name again. Geez, there's no point worrying about a partner like you, I suppose. I was the worried one, I can't believe this, in fact. Subaru. So sorry. I didn't mean it like that. For a moment, the figure of the Black Earth Dragon brushed his mind, and his lips softened. As Beatrice watched, Subaru hurriedly came back to his senses. However, even in this scene, Patrash remains the only one who Subaru can put his trust in. Actually, only Patrash who ran the risk of death to defend Subaru, regardless of its true intentions or feelings, a being who remained by the side of Natsuki Subaru. Meili, really? If she knew that Oni-san isn't Natsuki Subaru, I still wonder if she would do the same thing. Subaru. Meili, after all, on Oni-san's side, there isn't anyone, is there? Resonating in his mind is a smiling voice mocking Subaru. Haunting him, an existence that differs from Natsuki Subaru tries to break his optimism. It was a silly point, and he would have been better off laughing it away. However, at this moment, Subaru couldn't afford that. His heart came to half agree with the girl's words. If they were to discover that even the kindness that made Patrash throw her everything at him, that which was directed at Natsuki Subaru, and that the current Subaru was a fake, he reckoned she would come to disregard him. Beatrice, hey, Subaru, give me your hand, I suppose. Subaru, sure. His brain being toyed around by the girl's voice, Subaru grits his teeth with emotions that were hard to accept. Consequently, his vision started to shift out of focus. Holding out her hand, in an attempt to hold his, suddenly she made a face indicating that she had noticed something. Her gaze staring at Subaru's wrist, she noticed it. Beatrice, there are scratches, in fact, and so many. Rolling up the sleeve of Subaru's right arm, Beatrice furrowed her eyebrows at the scratches, pathetic and painful to look at. Even if it seemed she did not notice the scratches deeply bored further up in his arm, just the forearm is enough. Subaru. At the moment, Beatrice does not know how Meili had died. She therefore shouldn't be able to immediately connect these scratches with Meili's death. But, even discounting this, she should be wondering where on earth he got these scratches. If Meili's corpse is found, she will inevitably be suspicious. Subaru. His unprepared heart began beating like an alarm bell going off. Before his eyes, laying her eyes upon his hand, Beatrice did not notice that expression of his. With instant action it would be possible to take care of Beatrice. Meili, what are you gonna do? Shouldn't you get started already? As if playing with his self-confidence, the voice urges Subaru to a decision. His temple throbbed from the blood circulating through it, along with his pounding heart. As things were, depending on what Beatrice continued with, he'd have to. Beatrice, it seems you scratched your arm again. A bad habit, I suppose. Subaru, what? Beatrice, this isn't good, in fact. If Amelia had noticed it, you would have made her really worried, I suppose. Even Betty can't overlook this when it's this bad, in fact. Tracing Subaru's scars with her fingers, Beatrice painfully cast her eyes down. Following those remarks, Subaru was unable to move from the unexpected impact of her words. It was almost as if Beatrice was familiar with the scratches that covered Subaru's arm. Even so, supposing the others noticed the scratches on Subaru, it is still completely different from the horrible situation. For entirely different reasons. There's no mistaking that this time the arm is scratched in self-mutilation. She had even said that she had concealed this from Amelia, which in itself was shocking. Beatrice, if you go to the room with the spirit, these wounds will be healed as well, I suppose. But still, because Betty cannot bear looking at it, Betty will heal it even if a little bit. As she says so, Beatrice wraps Subaru's wrist with a pale light. The cozy sensation that came about, warm as it was perhaps the twinge of his wounds healing up. Healing magic is what is being shown before his eyes. Subaru. At the same moment, any hostility that Subaru had for Beatrice inside was rapidly swept away. Along with this warmth, the humanity of Natsuki Subaru, which had ruptured along with the wounds on his wrist, certainly seemed to be restored as well. Meili, boring. The little girl grumbled in Subaru's head, as if her hopes had been betrayed. Whilst listening to her directly in his skull, Subaru swallowed down the evil environment that had taken root in his head. Certainly, it had been an option. But, it had been nothing more than an option. There is no need for him to lead himself in the direction that longs for their Book of the Dead. Especially in a situation where he hadn't any preparation. Subaru. Inflicting harm on Beatrice right now is not a good idea. His preparations are not ready yet. Even if he takes the worst possible means, it must be done after thorough plans are made. As such, now, this place. Beatrice, come now, let's go, I suppose. Subaru. Betty will eventually talk about it to everyone afterwards, in fact. Subaru, alright. Sorry to bother you, Beatrice. Beatrice, promise not to speak about this, I suppose. Although he did not know whether the concern of the girl before his eyes is genuine or not, Natsuki Subaru thought that he ought to listen to her. Firstly, though this is unrelated, there exists a phrase. Murder becomes a habit. That is one of the phrases the famous detective, Hercule Poirot, left the world with. Murder becomes a habit. The meaning of this phrase doesn't refer to a person who has killed a human being, and then suddenly wakes up with a preference for murdering people, who then repeats the crime to satisfy their cravings. Murder becomes a habit. It refers to someone who solved their problem once by murder. For them, whenever another problem arises, they will think about trying to break through the problem through murder again. Murder becomes a habit. By the time they start to consider that murder is not one of those options, the utmost important thing would have had already changed. Murder becomes a habit. The truth is, even if there was a single murderer who didn't commit a crime by his own will, even if he dislikes the act, even if you see a glimpse of the memory of the one who had been harmed by such an action, that habit does not go. Murder becomes a habit. That habit, it does not go. Murder becomes a habit. End of chapters 47 and 48. I won't forgive you.